If you want to explain the Second Amendment effectively to basically anybody, you cannot water it down. You have to stop. You have to stop pretending it's about sport shooting. You have to stop pretending that it's about hunting or anything like that. You got to stand on business, man. You got to tell people what the Second Amendment is actually there for. Why did our founding fathers come up with such a thing? Did they just put it in the Constitution for no particular reason? They just throw it in there, see what happens? No. They had just fought a revolutionary war. The Declaration of Independence tells us that if any government becomes destructive to these ends, it's the right of the people to alter or abolish it. See, you explain the Second Amendment by explaining that it is the final check and balance between a free people and their government. If you are not armed in defense of your rights, you kind of don't even have those rights. Of course, you do in the most literal sense, but what's to stop a government, or anyone for that matter, from violating your rights? If you are not armed, you're not free. You're only as free as your government is temporarily allowing you to be. You live in the illusion of freedom. There's plenty of places all across the world that would claim to be free, but how free really are they? I mean, we love, for example, the First Amendment in the United States. What's the First Amendment look like in the UK? You might think, oh, that's great. They get to say whatever they want. No, they don't. People get arrested for all sorts of speech crimes. You're not allowed to say things that are grossly offensive in the UK. Yeah, well, that's not freedom of speech. All of the freedoms that you enjoy, the First Amendment, Fourth, Fifth, Sixth, you name it, all of the freedoms that we have as Americans are totally dependent upon the Second Amendment. One of the ways to explain this as a final check and balance that gets through to a certain cohort of the population, what if tomorrow, for no explainable reason, the president just went nuts? And he decided he wanted to be an authoritarian dictator. And he says he's going to send the Supreme Court home. He's going to abolish Congress. And he tells all of the members of the military to follow his orders or they're going to be court-martialed. And let's say they do. What's going to stop the president from becoming a dictator? You think, oh, that could never happen. That's never happened before. Those sorts of things, are unprecedented. Who could think of such a thing? Go back in time and just study a little bit of history from the last 150 to 200 years. This has happened and will happen in the future in democratic countries, in free countries with free people. Look at the rise, for one, of Adolf Hitler. Look at the rise all across the world. When tyrants want to come to power, the most important first step for them is to disarm the people. It's really hard to load somebody into a box cart when they're holding an AR-15. It's really hard to violate the rights of your people when they're armed in defense of those rights. Now, you might still prevail. I suppose it's possible, but you don't become a dictator without disarming your people. If anything, you might become a general in a civil war. Those are two very, very different things, and it's a conversation for another day as to whether or not the people can fight off their own government, but it's been proven many, many times all throughout history. We are a nation born out of such a circumstance. You say, oh, well, the United States military could never lose to a ragtag group of people. I mean, we've seen Afghanistan and Vietnam. We've seen what can happen. Guerrilla war is a very effective means of defending your own rights. There's all sorts of people who can speak to that at much greater length than I can. But the whole reason that we have the Second Amendment is to protect ourselves from any enemy, foreign or domestic. So it's not just that the United States government goes crazy. Let's say at some point we cut our military funding. We're not the global hegemon anymore. We don't kind of rule the world as the global police. And let's say we get invaded someday. There's a very famous quote, you could never invade the United States. There'd be a rifle behind every blade of grass. We're seeing what's happening in Spain. Tens of thousands of people just came pouring into Spain. Now there's reports that they're breaking into people's houses. They're ripping them out. It's like a full-on invasion force. There's people with like machetes in the street and they're just running off the native Spaniards. Well, the Spaniards can't defend themselves from a foreign enemy. If we were to be invaded tomorrow, well, we can protect ourselves. If the president was to go crazy or the entire federal government was to come into the hands of one political party or the other and it just went totally nuts and they said, we're going off the rails, the thing that stops that from happening is an armed population. The Second Amendment is not about hunting. That's awesome. And I love hunting is a wonderful secondary byproduct of an armed people. Sport shooting is fantastic. That's awesome. It's a wonderful secondary byproduct. It's like a hobby that people might want to do. But the purpose of the Second Amendment is to protect you from the very government that you fear. Talking to people who are on the left side of the political spectrum, they often have a great level of distrust for the police, for the government. Okay, I have a great level of distrust for the government too. I don't want to give the government a monopoly on the use of force. I don't want them to be the only one in the room that's carrying a big stick. I want to be able to protect myself, to fulfill the promise of the Declaration of Independence. If you want a history lesson, 1775, the shot heard round the world. Before the signing of the American Declaration of Independence, the first shots of the war were actually in 1775, whenever the king decided he was going to disarm the people. They don't really talk about it very much in public school anymore, but Lexington and Concord were munitions depots. It's where they kept a lot of gunpowder. It's where they kept a lot of the guns, stockpiles, big stockpiles, so that they could defend themselves. And the king said, hey, we can't have these royal subjects who are getting all uppity. We can't have them well armed. That would be very difficult. How are we going to impose our will on them if they're armed? So King George said, let's go take the guns preemptively, like basically every other tyrant in history. He said, we have to remove their ability to defend themselves. So anytime you hear the government saying, we're going to remove your right to defend yourself, or anytime you hear your own government saying, you have to come and beg for the government's permission to exercise your rights, free men don't ask permission to exercise their rights. That's what slaves do. And it's not actually a right at that point. It's a privilege. That's a privilege. You have to ask, hey, mom, hey, dad, hey, big brother government, can I maybe get a little freedom? Well, then that's not actually freedom at all. The Second Amendment exists to protect you from any enemy, foreign or domestic, to protect me, to protect our entire country. And if you get rid of it, you will inevitably get rid of every other freedom that we have. That is how you explain the Second Amendment to anyone.